There's a level of virtue that makes people look at you with respect. And today, you'll discover exactly how to cultivate it. Have you ever seen that person who never wavers, who lives by their principles every day, at the same time, performs the same practices, and simply never falters? While everyone else abandons their resolutions by the third week, they persist. While everyone else makes excuses, they act with purpose. And you know what people say about them? That's not normal. There's an ancient system developed by Aristotle in classical Athens that produces exactly this kind of unwavering excellence. He called it hexis, the disposition that perpetuates itself. And once you understand how it works, you'll never break a commitment again. But there's a catch. This system isn't for everyone. It requires you to transform a part of yourself you never knew existed. But before I show you how it works, subscribe to the channel, like it below, and comment on the virtue you most want to develop in your life. This helps me greatly and shows me that you're genuinely committed to excellence. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Awakening. The story I'm about to tell you happened to a merchant named Demetrius. He was an intelligent man, a successful trader. But he had one problem. He couldn't maintain any practice for more than 2 weeks. Physical training. He'd stop after 2 months. Contemplation. 1 week and that was it. Studying philosophy. He'd acquire a text, read 3 passages, and then forget it on his shelf. The pattern was always the same. Monday, complete determination. Wednesday, first mental excuse. Friday, total abandonment. Sunday, promises about the following week. Demetrius tried everything. Written schedules, rewards, accountability through companions. Nothing worked, because he was fighting something he couldn't even perceive. The very architecture of his character. Until the day he discovered why Aristotle's students at the Lyceum could practice philosophy for decades without missing a single day. And no, it's not willpower. It's something much deeper and much more profound. Chapter 2, The Secret of the Lyceum. In Aristotle's school, there was a principle that seems simple but changes everything. Hexis. Literally translated, it means a stable disposition achieved through practice, through continuous practice. Do you understand what that means? It means that from the Lyceum's founding, every single day at dawn, the bell rang for morning exercises. And from that founding, every single day, the students rose. Not before dawn, not after dawn, exactly at dawn. You want to know what never happened in that school? No student lay in bed thinking, today I'll skip. The questions simply didn't exist in their minds. Why? Because they understood something you don't yet. Your soul categorizes every commitment into 2 types. Those aligned with your character, or those opposed to it. Commitments aligned with character simply happen. Commitments opposed to character require constant negotiation. When a student declared themselves a philosopher before the entire community at the Lyceum, they weren't making a promise. They were transforming their identity. They weren't promising to try to contemplate. They were declaring themselves a contemplative. The community witnessed it. The identity changed. The negotiation ended. Modern research on human behavior confirms what Aristotle knew. When you make a behavior public, your fundamental nature interprets failure as an existential threat. Our ancestors who lost reputation in the polis suffered greatly. Your mind still operates this way. That's exactly what Demetrius did. He stopped making private promises and started making public declarations. He wrote on parchment, I am a person who contemplates 20 minutes every day at dawn for 90 consecutive days. He signed it. He announced it in the agora. He told everyone. His wife said, "You're being too dramatic." His fellow merchant said, "Man, you're trying too hard." Perfect. Every person he knew became fuel for his practice. Every morning he wanted to abandon his commitment. He thought about having to face everyone and admit he was just another man who couldn't honor his word. Day 3 brought the first real test. The hour was dawn. Immediately, his mind began its usual routine. "You're exhausted. This isn't healthy. One day won't make a difference." But something fundamental had changed. The thought of announcing publicly that he'd failed after 3 days was unbearable. Having to look his wife in the face and admit he'd given up again. The public declaration had made giving up more painful than continuing. But here, the real problem began. Chapter 3. The Internal War. Even with all this social pressure, Demetrius was still waging war every single day. His body didn't care about his reputation. It wanted to sleep when tired. The public declaration ended the mental negotiation, but he still fought his natural impulses every morning. That's when he discovered Aristotle's second principle: fixed time for practice. Every day you waste mental energy on the same foolish question. When will I do this? Now or after breakfast? In the morning or at night? This decision depletes the energy in your soul that should be used for actual practice. You're wasting your strength deciding when to act instead of actually acting. Demetrius chose dawn, not because he was a morning person who loved watching the sunrise. He chose dawn because the city was still sleeping. No interruptions, no distractions, no messages, no excuses. The time wasn't about optimization. It was about elimination. Eliminating every possible reason to delay. The first week was torment. His body fought against it every morning. That's natural. Your body is a creature of habit, and you're forcing it to build a new habit. It resists. In the second week, something changed. He started waking 2 minutes before the appointed hour. His body had begun preparing for what now awaited him. On the 14th day, the hour arrived, and his feet touched the floor before his conscious mind even engaged. No thought, no decision, just movement. Here's what most people don't understand about fixed hours. It's not about finding the perfect schedule. It's about removing time as a variable. When you practice at different times every day, you're asking your mind to make a new decision every time. When the schedule is fixed, your mind cannot argue with a constant. But Demetrius discovered a new problem. His schedule was fixed, but he kept changing what he did during that time. Some mornings, contemplation felt right. Other days, he studied texts, sometimes physical exercises. His mind had found a new negotiating point. Instead of arguing about when, he started arguing about what. 20 minutes at dawn became reliable, but the practice itself was chaos. The fixed schedule had solved half the equation, but his mind was still finding ways to negotiate. He'd eliminated the when, but not the what. And this is where Aristotle's teaching on form became crucial, because it requires you to do exactly the same thing every single day until your soul completely accepts it. Chapter 4. The One Way. You think variety keeps things interesting, but variety is actually where excellence dies. Every time you change what you're doing, your mind has to make small decisions. Should I practice rhetoric or logic today? Which text should I study? How long should I contemplate? every small decision is a crack where your old patterns leak back in. Demetrius completely established his form. 20 physical exercises, 10 minutes of contemplation, 10 minutes of reading philosophy. Same order, same measure, same practice. His personal ascesis period. 90 days of identical practice. His friends called him robotic. His wife said he was becoming obsessive. They didn't understand that obsessive was exactly the point. Third week, his mind went to war. Every morning, it demanded variety. This is foolish. You're not a machine. Vary your practice or you'll exhaust yourself. Fourth week, something broke. Not his discipline, but his resistance. The voice of negotiation grew quieter. By week 6, he was halfway through his exercises before he even realized he'd started. The practice was sustaining itself. This is what people don't understand about excellence. It's not about willpower lasting forever. It's about repetition until willpower is no longer needed. Your body learns the sequence like an actor learns their part. Modern research on habit formation confirms when you repeat an action in the same context for approximately 66 days, the primitive structures of the brain take over. The behavior becomes automatic. You are no longer deciding to do it. You are simply doing it. On the 35th day, Demetrius fell ill. On the 40th, he was traveling for trade. This is where the old pattern returns. Sick day equals rest day. Travel equals exception. This is where you gave up before, where everyone gives up. Because perfect practice requires perfect conditions, and perfect conditions do not exist. But Aristotle understood something about continuity that changes everything. He wrote that practice must continue without even a moment of interruption. Because in that interruption, all your old patterns return. What saved Demetrius when everything went wrong was understanding that practice doesn't require perfection. It requires continuity. Chapter 5. Practice without gap. The all-or-nothing thinking has destroyed more excellence than laziness ever could. You tell yourself, if I can't do the full 20 minutes, why do anything? If I can't perform perfect exercises, I'll wait until tomorrow. This thinking creates gaps, and gaps are where your old self returns. Look at any accomplished athlete, and you'll see something people misinterpret. They have rest days, but those rest days are still aligned with excellence. They're intentional, strategic, planned, never because they feel lazy, never because they don't want to train. A rest day allows them to train harder tomorrow. This is still movement toward the goal. But when you skip because you're tired, that's not rest, it's retreat. A river never stops flowing. During a drought, it may be a trickle, but it never stops. The moment it stops, it's no longer a river. It's a memory of where water used to be. Your practice is the same. The moment you create a gap, you're no longer practicing. You're someone who used to practice. The travel day arrived on day 40. Departure before dawn. Negotiations all day. No gymnasium at the inn. Demetrius performed exercises in his room at the inn. People looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Excellent. He contemplated in the wagon. He read on the journey. Nothing was perfect. Everything maintained momentum toward the same goal he declared 90 days ago. This is hexis, practice perpetuating itself. That's when people started to notice. Fellow merchants said he seemed different. Friends said he was becoming extreme. Someone actually said his discipline wasn't healthy, that normal people don't act like that. When you hear these words, you know you're on the right path. Normal people achieve normal results. You're not trying to be normal. You're trying to achieve excellence. But here's what no one prepares you for: the unexpected obstacles you never saw coming, the things you can't plan for because you don't know they exist. Chapter 6. Pre-solutions. Your child falls ill. Your cart breaks down on the way to the gymnasium. Your patron keeps you late. These are excellence killers because you haven't predetermined how to handle them. Every time an unexpected obstacle appears, you have to make a decision under pressure. That decision, in that moment of chaos, is where you'll choose the path of least resistance every time. The obstacle wins because you're fighting a battle you didn't prepare for. Aristotle's Lyceum operated for generations without missing a single day of practice. Plagues, wars, political upheaval. The practice continued. How? They didn't make decisions when obstacles arose. The answer already existed. When the covered walkway flooded, they moved to the open courtyard. When the courtyard was occupied, they gathered in the library. There was no debate, no discussion, no negotiation. The hour arrived. The response was automatic. Demetrius wrote down every obstacle that had ever broken his consistency and pre-solved each one. Plan for rain. Exercises in the covered area. Guests staying home. Silent practice in the storage room. Illness, which shouldn't be taken lightly, but if minor. 2 exercises. 1 minute of contemplation, 1 passage of philosophy. Each scenario had its predetermined response. When this happens, I do this. No thinking, no negotiating, just execution. The power of this isn't just maintaining the sequence, it's that you stop wasting mental energy on decisions. Your mind knows that no matter what happens tomorrow, the practice continues. This certainty transforms your entire character. Modern research on decision-making confirms when you pre-decide your actions, you remove decision fatigue from the critical moment. Your rational faculty responsible for willpower remains intact to execute rather than decide. Day 70. Demetrius's practice had become completely automatic. He would sometimes complete his exercises not even remembering starting them. His body simply moved through the sequence like a trained instrument. His wife's family visited for a week. He performed exercises in the courtyard before dawn. The practice continued because the answers were already determined. On the 90th day, he completed his personal ascesis. 3 months of uninterrupted practice. But something deeper had happened. He was no longer the same person. Chapter 7. The Transformation. Friends literally told him, "Your discipline is frightening." His response was perfect. Excellent. Because when your virtue makes others uncomfortable, you're finally operating at the right level. Your existence proves that everything they say is impossible is actually just uncomfortable. That's why they'll call you obsessive. That's why they'll say you need moderation. They need you to slow down so they can feel better about standing still. But you're not doing it for them. You're doing it because you've discovered the secret. Excellence isn't about doing something every day. It's about becoming someone who cannot do it any other way. When you implement Aristotle's hexis system, public declaration, fixed schedule, unchanging practice, and predetermined solutions, you're not just creating habits, you're reshaping your character. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who simply is. And when that happens, when that transformation is complete, people will look at you and think, "How does he do that?" And the answer will be simple. He doesn't. He is. The question remains, are you ready for this level of transformation? because it's not about discipline. It's about death and rebirth. The death of your inconsistent self. The birth of your excellent self. The hexis system won't make you a better person. It'll make you a different person. Someone others will look at and think, that's not normal. And when you hear those words, you'll know you've finally arrived where you aim to be. If this teaching changed your perspective on virtue and excellence, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss future wisdom that will transform you. And tell me in the comments, what will your public declaration be? What practice will you implement using Aristotle's hexis system? Remember, the excellence that troubles others is the only excellence worth pursuing. If you've watched this far, I thank you greatly for your attention. Until we meet again in the next teaching.